Welcome to the last DAO day for 2022, our wrap-up session. It's the 16th of December today, and would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we all meet and extend our respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. I'm joining you from Wurundjeri land today, and just encourage you to put in the chat as well, and where you're joining from if you'd like to. Would also like to acknowledge the Lo-Fi DAO beliefs and values being respect, reciprocity, integrity, and kindness, while doing things differently and appreciating that time is our most precious resource. Welcome to Vic and Greg also.
Hey.
Hi, team.
The agenda for today is very, very short, just a very quick update on the week that's been, and then opening up to community discussion. So the membership token survey responses continue to flow in, but we're still sub 20 and we've got 34 members. So I'll be doing a reminder drive for anybody that wants to fill out that survey and make sure that they get their membership token to participate in the experiments that are mostly going to flow through the series of workshops that Andrew and his team are going to lead in February next year, which on that point, there is an email that's going to go out and the recruitment campaign will follow shortly. There's been little bits of requests to get some accounting support. So conversations with both PKF as well as what we know as SAFE now, but you might refer to as Gnosis SAFE, whether there are any integrations planned for them with the likes of Xero and MyOb and the popular accounting softwares, and applications that went in for insurance. So it's been quite a past week of admin heavy items more so, and just getting the DAO's compliance hygiene in order as we go forward. And I've been chipping away at the first blog, and hopefully you'll have it in your hot little hands and decide whether you would like to do a little pay to rely contribution for the first blog on Wednesday. I think we'll ship that or it will be in your hot little hands. So that's all from me on official business, and just keep an eye out on your emails and Discord between December, January, because in that period, we'll post some announcements about the format of the community calls for 2023 and a bit more of what to expect or what we propose to do. So apart from that, community discussion, I've got a huge update to give, but I want to encourage you all to share what's going on for you. For the last week, I've been attending the RMIT What's Governing Web3 conference, where we had the authors of the Koala DAO model law, Primavera Di Filippi and Morshed Manan, and we had representatives from Filecoin Foundation, Balancer, Gnosis, SAFE, a number of other protocols and academics working on key areas of research in DAO science. The field is now named. So yeah, lots of information to share there, but I'll just open it up to the group. Anybody want to share things that are going on, highs and lows for this week, or predictions into 2023?
Joni, I attended the What's Governing Web3 public session on Wednesday when you were up in Sydney, so
Yeah.
had cover there, and that was a very interesting day actually, with some really high quality speakers. Primavera was one of those, but as was SAFE. And a number of other parties from Block Science and the like. So I thought it was a very encouraging piece, and one of the best panels of the day, I might say, was the Indigenous panel that Rick Shaw took part in. I thought that gave some very interesting insight and opportunities for how Web3 might embrace some Indigenous learnings and teachings and philosophy in terms of opening things up beyond a Web 2 and a more, it was phrased as a colonial past, but let's say it's the corporate past, and just making cuts through a number of the potential is there to cut through a lot of the barriers. So there was a lot to take out of that.
Yeah, I heard great feedback about that session. Also, Jason Potts wanting to come up with a turn of phrase almost for the opportunity ahead of us. And I think the working phrase is this is digital development economics. So we're like to go into the next age of, you know, prosperity and abundance, which our First Nations cultures teach us. That we have digital and we have our development economic theories, but combining them together is our next step, and we can learn a lot from our First Nations cultures. And Rick's been gracing us with his presence on a few of our community calls and a few of the sessions, and just the sharing of his cultural knowledge. Every time I learn something, it's fantastic. Anyone else want to make some observations or predictions, if you so dare? Greg, you've got to have some on the NFT front. Or Greg Oakford. But Greg M, you may also have some.
I think the NFT front is still ticking along. There's just not as much hype or, you know, sort of cut through in sort of mainstream. I mean, there's a lot of experimentation still happening right now. Stuff happening on Reddit. I mean, internet culture is the interesting thing, right? Like, I think a lot of people don't have their pulse on that, and then when it becomes a critical mass, everyone goes, "Oh wow, where did this spring up from?" So there's shit springing up everywhere at the moment. It's just sort of what's going to stick. I'm probably bullish on sort of art and potentially music NFTs too. I think we'll see the experimentation, and gaming as well, but I don't play in the gaming ecosystem as much. It's just I'm just not a gamer, so my interests don't lie there. But I think,
was that a deliberate pun?
Yeah. No, I've got a hungover brain, so there's no deliberate puns here at all.
Great. I don't play in the gaming space. That's fantastic.
No, I think art. I think you know, we haven't got our heads around yet that there's literally a whole new creator economy being built underground. Everyone just thinks it's a little bit silly still at the moment, but I have no doubt that it's going to be absolutely massive. But yeah, I don't know. 2023 just continues to move on.
That's right. And Alex, I like the subtle repeating of what the pun was, just to help us all out. For those of us who also may be a little slow this morning, it's been a big week. So thank you.
Well, if people wonder why I'm enjoying life so much, is I'm finding joy in what other people are saying. So you know, sometimes you have to go back and say it. So if everyone's not laughing like I am, I think either they've got no sense of humor, or you know,
or they missed it.
Got a hangover.
Yeah.
Got a hangover.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Alex, any observations from you? You've been in and amongst the blockchain community and in the events this week. We've actually seen you in person.
Yeah. I'm taller than I look on camera. And oh my, I really don't think I know enough. I predict that I will know more next year about this than I did this year, which is a zero risk of being wrong. I think I mean, Greg, your point on NFTs, one of the things that I did was try and log it. Well, I did. I a few weeks ago set up an account on the Sandbox and sort of created a MetaMask wallet and did a few other things along the way. And I've been into a few other apps and things. And I'm just amazed. And I think it goes to the experimentation thing that you're talking about there, that you know, there's a lot of new experiences being set up sort of constantly, and I've gone into them to kind of try and get a sense of what it's all about. And and they're not fun games, right? They're more kind of places to go and visit and experience and explore, right? From what I've seen so far. And but a common theme around all of them is NFT, like creating, publicizing art galleries, effectively showing experiences for NFTs, and links to view in stores and whatever else. And so on one hand, you can say, well, that's pretty basic and really, so what? And I'm not going to run off and spend, I don't know how much. I didn't even look at how much they cost, but I'm not going to go off and do that. And then you kind of think, yeah, but doing it and trying it and seeing what happens and kind of coming back, it is all that experimentation stuff. And I've got no doubt that they're, things are moving. But I was reading articles, and Greg, I'm really interested in what you think about this. The whole, everyone's trying to make markets and make some money. Sorry, I shouldn't say everybody. There is a group of people that are trying to create markets, make money, and that's understandable. I'm not criticizing that, but all this stuff about selling and reselling, and then monitoring kind of wallets that are moving, eliminating transactions to get to an underlying truth rather than just looking at overall volumes and activity. They're kind of saying, what are the real buyers and sellers out there compared to the people trying to influence the appearance of the economics to try and generate interest, like unrealistic staking returns or just wallet transactions that aren't actually, it's artificial, isn't it? Sorry. And I just wonder, is there going to be a lot more focus next year? So here's my prediction. After saying all of those random different thoughts, trying to link them together and then stop, there'll be more kind of understanding about what that is, and maybe even a need to sort of cut to the chase on some of these things, and hopefully try and eliminate the people that are just trying to, pump and dump or scam or whatever. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. Like there's flippers, right? And I did that with a Tim Ferriss NFT last week as the first win that I had for 7 months, right? So I minted it for 0.3 and I decided to sell it at 1.6. And I actually, I'm going to buy back into the project because I'm a big Tim Ferriss fan and I want to see what he's doing sort of in this space. But my experience over the last 18 to 20 months sort of went pre-reveal, like that's just a mechanic of the NFT, was there was a 2-day delay to see actually what NFT you got. So everyone just had a blank thumbnail essentially, or a standard thumbnail. So I sold it at 1.6 and then it sort of dropped down over the next couple of days to 0.6. So there is an aspect, particularly in its current format with NFTs, where there are a lot of people that, I'm traditionally a holder, but I decided to flip on that one. But I don't see the flipping side of things as big a problem as the scams, right? I think the scams are a lot worse. The flippers often bring liquidity to the markets as well. So it's not necessarily always a bad thing. Where it gets a little bit tricky is if you're a Tim Ferriss fan for the first time and you just wanted to buy his NFT, if you don't really understand what a mint is, like mint price versus buying on secondary and all that, this is why you've got to get educated. You could have come in and bought the one I sold at 1.6 and then woke up the next day and gone, holy shit, the price is cut in half. And you feel duped because you're like, I paid $2,000 for this thing. It's now only worth $1,000 if I resell it. I'm sitting here going, I paid a couple $100, sold it for 2,000, and I'm going to buy back in if it drops. Now, that doesn't always work because maybe the price keeps climbing, but very rarely does that happen with a pre-reveal mechanism. But I just knew that because of my experience I was 98% sure that was going to happen. So that's the hard part is people need to understand that it's a live market. And I suppose in a way, it's no different to buying traditional art, right? If you go to a gallery and you buy a piece of traditional art and the next month that artist blows up for whatever reason, they get on a Time magazine or whatever it is, and someone comes along and says, I want to pay you 10x the price that you paid last month, like that's obviously a financial decision for you, but that person that wants to pay 10x, I mean, it could easily chop in half the next month as well. So it's people just have to understand that, when you're dealing with sort of secondary markets, that it's not necessarily always going to work out well for you financially. So you have to know almost why you're buying. And if you're buying just because you want to support that project or support the artist, and you sort of have to pick an entry price and stick to it.
So that's fascinating, because once again, I mean, all of the focus on crypto has been around lack of regulation around disclosures and controls and this and that and whatever else, right? So, but NFTs, you're right. There's kind of two real elements here. One, some people just see NFTs full stop as kind of these little kind of volatile investment kind of vehicles that you can buy into and sell out of, whether you understand the market or not. And then there are the actual, kind of collectors like art and like, I've got stuff on my wall. I mean, I've overpaid. I've paid the artist price in a gallery or whatever for a piece of work because I like it. I want to put it on the wall.
Yeah.
And you get no instant feedback. But like you said, I know I can't sell it for what I bought it for. In fact, when you buy a car, you can't sell it for what you bought it for. If you do anything, you can't sell it for what you bought it for. So I guess the whole point is, is the education piece the thing of, treat this like any other kind of thing that you might buy, that, it's not just an investment. It's actually buy it if you like it and be happy with the price you're paying for it. And don't buy it because you think it's going to go up.
I don't think I've ever said to anyone, buy an NFT as an investment. Now, that's not to say that other people have said it. Like, I've done well on a couple of ones. I mean, I've ridden some to extraordinary heights and ridden them to extraordinary lows back down the roller coaster. But I don't think you should buy NFTs as an investment, because you're setting yourself up for failure, essentially. Like, the two biggest ones I bought them because, one, I liked the actual quote unquote picture and I wanted to unlock a benefit that holders had versus non-holders. And the second one I bought was essentially a membership token to be in a private Discord. And that ended up blowing up to 1,000 other things as well. So I think you just buy stuff. Like, one of my favorite NFTs cost me 0.05 ETH. So in today's market, that'd be like, what is that? $50, $100, something like that, Australian. And it's by an artist called Heart You, and I minted it and I love it. Like, it just spoke to me straight away. I've blown it up on a canvas. It's in the other room, hanging up in the house. And when I look at it in my wallet, all those galleries you're talking about, that whether it's a Sandbox, but there's also like other galleries like on Cyber and stuff. If I want to put that up, and then, the things like the Instagram integrations that are coming along, I think they're being downplayed at the moment, because you think about all the shit we put on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, like, we're essentially showing parts of our life off digitally, and more people see that than people coming into your house. And I think that, in the coming years, it's going to be the norm, where if we Google each other and find out, just a little bit about what you care about, what you're interested in, like, I might have a meeting with you and just quickly Google you or look you up on LinkedIn or whatever. I think we will live in a world where you sort of see like, oh, wow, they have an NFT from that artist. That's one of my favorite artists too. Or they went to this grand final at the AFL or NRL and I can see their ticket, which was a replica NFT, or it might be a real NFT ticket in the future. And then all of a sudden you got something to sort of bond over, similar to if you saw someone, on Google that they had, I don't know, written a feature about something or some topic that you're interested in. And I think that will become the norm in the coming years, because there's an emotional connection to NFTs that you collect that most people haven't experienced yet. But that's the example of the one I told you about, where it's not my most lucrative one. I paid, $50, $100. I could probably sell it for 500 right now, but I don't think I'll ever sell it, because it feels like it's a timestamp of my life when I minted it, and it just spoke to me, and I love the art. So
it's sorry. I mean, I very much feel like, Joni, you welcome everyone to talk, and then I kind of hear all these conversations going places, and then I kind of think, well, is this actually relevant or of any interest to the Lawfi DAO discussion? But well,
it is, because in the DAO context, a lot of the sentiment and the thinking that Greg is just talking through is supposed to be very similar for you choosing to purchase a DAO governance token. But the noise around it has been, will this token go to the moon or not? Not necessarily people looking to, okay, well, if they're not investing, or if they're not purchasing the governance token at the initial token distribution event, and that event is usually what funds the treasury for the ongoing funding of the public good protocol and the public good, maintenance of governance around the protocol. There's a core contributor base of people that are needed to do that. And but if you buy the governance token on market, it is this, because nothing goes to the treasury, it's this sense of speculation and investment and gain, and maybe not so much of the emotional connection to, oh, I do want to use this lending protocol. It is software that I can use in my own, personal and then professional stack, therefore I want to support it. That message has been lost to the financialization and the global market trading ability of these things that are fungible and transferable.
So I saw some comment the other day about for artists, particularly around music, and Andrew, Greg, I know you mentioned musicians, before the music piece. Is it possible to build in on the on-selling of some of these, whether it be access rights or whatever, DAO membership rights versus just the NFT or whatever else itself, that the original artist gets a percentage of the transaction? So instead of just being transferable between two people, part of the contract effectively would be 5% of whatever sale price goes to. So going to your point, Joni, if someone does want to buy, if the price does change and someone wants to buy that, then 5% goes back to the original group as a reinvestment back in the treasury or whatever.
Royalty.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. I'm just kind of, because then actually it takes it into you keep reinvesting and the new person still pays, back into the original pool rather than being pure speculation. There's kind of a reinvestment and a recommitment.
That's where it's a bit controversial at the moment, where marketplaces actually take the royalties. Like they essentially enforce the royalties. So there's no royalty built into the smart contract itself, even though
could there be?
For most of 2021, most NFT collectors thought that was the case, but it's actually, if you're using OpenSea, they'll take 2.5% clip, and then the creator, whether it's an artist or a PFP project or a musician, can set their own royalty. And, some of them go, I haven't really seen much higher than 10%, but 10's pretty high when you factor in OpenSea's 2.5, so that's 12.5. A lot of projects or artists will do 2.5 or 5%. But there's been a lot of marketplaces, particularly in the last 6 to 8 months, that have popped up doing either 0% royalties, or they're not enforcing them. So essentially, if I own a piece of art, instead of selling it on OpenSea, where I might lose 10% of the sale, 7.5% to the artist, 2.5% to OpenSea,
yeah,
I can go sell it on an alternative marketplace, and that marketplace might not enforce the artist's 7.5%. And they'll do their own percentage, maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 0.5%. So essentially their value proposition is forget the artist and forget OpenSea, come sell it on our marketplace. We'll only charge you 1% instead of 10% over here. So that has caused a little bit of havoc for, particularly for the artists and for the projects that are counting on sort of those secondary royalties. So it's a bit of a political battle at the moment.
So would it be possible to, this is a tech question, I guess, but from the NFT point of view, couldn't you put some stuff within the NFT that would force that?
So the Greg will have a technical answer to this, but
No.
About a year ago, a number of the big DAOs who have fungible governance tokens, a topic of discussion was whether they migrate the fungible token to an NFT, so that for every secondary market trade, there was a payment, or there were other reasons for using NFTs, but one of them included that they could code in a payment or a contribution to the treasury, and that triggered some sort of more active acceptance that when you purchase the governance token, because the buyer is paying a membership fee of sorts to the DAO, and that goes to the treasury, that reignites the initial bargain that is struck to say, this is the purpose for which you are supporting the work that this DAO is doing. Now, a lot of DAOs didn't move that direction, also for a number of reasons. But a key movement since then is that Uniswap, as you know, one of the major decentralized exchanges, they now have capability, and they're increasing the features of an NFT marketplace. It's not just a fungible token exchange anymore. And what you're talking about, what Greg brought up, the likes of OpenSea and Rarible, you have to create an account on those marketplaces in order to claim your royalties, and that's where they intervene. There's not this automatic flow through back that you would expect with smart contract automation. They've intervened. And so a number of NFT projects, they think that they can solve the problem by having their own NFT marketplace and encouraging people to trade on there. And it's fragmenting, and a lot of people still identify with OpenSea and Rarible. So most of the trading and most of the accounts are still within those platforms, despite their interventionist behavior. But we're sort of watching closely as to how Uniswap tackles NFTs, because if they get it right, and if they support NFTs as governance tokens with that secondary market contribution back to the treasury, then all of a sudden DAO sustainability commercial models start to reflect a little bit more of the TradFi, traditional commercial institution ongoing fee that you can do discounted cash flow analysis and finally get some ongoing value around it with traditional metrics. But we're experimental. We're still learning. We've got this huge regulation backdrop that we're all afraid of, to be completely honest with you, as to whether that's going to be fit for purpose and allow freedom of experimentation and innovation safely, but not stifle it. So that's just to bring you the DAO context, and NFTs are absolutely part and parcel of that, but we haven't quite figured out where it will all fall.
One of the speakers on Wednesday actually talked about the existing rules that applied or could apply in this space for resale of NFTs. And it effectively came back to copyright law, existing copyright law. And what I took out of that is actually everybody's just ignoring it at the moment. So should the regulator decide, hey, this is a problem, I'm going to whack this, the same thing that has started to come through out of design and distribution obligations legislation that is now starting to whack people that don't know what they should know and how to trade is going to happen in this space. And it's quite wide. It covers galleries, it covers auctioneers, it covers artists, all sorts of people. So it's part of this piece. And this is one of the pieces that we're looking at in this workshop series, where the first thing to identify is the stuff that the unknown unknowns. Because at least once you know what the known unknowns are, you can take a decision as to whether you're going to do something about it or not. If you just go forward in a blissfully ignorant way, somewhere along the time, the resource allocation of whacking will move into the space that you happen to be operating in. And so it's a resource allocation exercise at a regulation level, really.
So Andrew, I mean, what occurs to me when I hear you say that is that, the Ethereum standards and the, I don't know whether Greg, is it ERC20 or whatever that is about the fund and NFT stuff, but whichever one it is there stuff in there around declaration of rights of ownership? Because I mean, obviously when you sell something contractually, you can say, I sell you this and the rights and the future rights, or you can say, I'm selling you a copy or a version of this or this, but there's different sorts of sales, aren't there? Right. There's different rights you can sell people when you sell something. Is that right?
It's so confusing because the smart contract code, the ERC 721,
721, right?
but there's an 1155 different NFT standard too.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, but that's programming, that's source code language. It didn't have any embedded, or at least the ones that were released first
So
off.
they need to add some stuff right around.
And
right,
there have been initiatives. So the Can't Be Evil suite of licenses that the A16Z team led, they've actually had a bunch of lawyers draft and reach consensus on 6 types of IP licenses. And you can embed now when you're minting an NFT, that can be the reference to one of those licenses can be embedded. So it's easy to have reference to that. But some other projects still choose to do bespoke terms and conditions and license agreements that they might display on their website or the front of their marketplace and be still quite manual. And you don't have that real-time enforcement in either of those approaches. And separately, there's blockchain innovation going on as to how to record your IP actually on the blockchain, and have correlated scanning crawlers going on to identify when your copyright or the license terms may be being breached. So that's a whole lot of innovation to help with the enforcement. Vic, I can see you got your hand up, and I've just noticed all of your great contributions in the chat. So fire away.
I'm spamming the chat. Sorry, guys.
It's great. It's great.
One thing that I've been thinking about this week is, and it's on the topic of terms and conditions for NFTs, but just generally digital assets, tokens. And in particular, when those tokens ascribe a set of membership rights, and okay, let's say you go to the gym a couple of years ago and there's some rules and they say no running in the pool area because it's unsafe. And then let's say, in the gym you had some really cool equipment, a couple of years later, and to put a few terms around that. No using the punching bag unless someone's watching. Okay, what's the equivalent of that in the digital realm when your token represents a membership right? And so I was thinking about this because, we can't actually account for all contractual eventualities or scenarios at the outset. If you're creating a live product or a product that's meant to represent, a continued association with the project. And the thing that I was thinking about was programmable terms or automation of variation of terms for the life of a project. I mean, hopefully your project's going to last, many, many years, and it's going to attract a really amazing audience, and you're going to have great engagement. You're going to be able to offer them heaps of cool stuff. So just thinking about what it means to produce contractual terms that can be updated with ease, produced and pushed out at scale. And this week I've been dicking around on ChatGPT, which is it's a super fun little program, and it's basically plain language drafting. So I've been using that to sort of draft my first contracts, see to what extent that program needs to be trained, and yes, it does. But how to produce, code bases of contractual terms that can then be updated with ease over time to meet the flexibility. I think it's in DAO science, it's called quote unquote maladaptation, end quote, conundrum or challenge. And just wanted to throw that out to the group to see what their thoughts were.
Alex, go ahead. That's a great comment that you raise.
Yes, thanks. So I don't know whether I need to expand on it. I mean, if people see that in the chat, I think, just listening to people, I kind of link things with what I know in the real world. And we deal with this all the time where the government will say the rates as applied and then publish some new ones, and every year. So it's kind of, it's not redundant to issue a token that says, here's the token and the terms are here, and the latest ones will apply, and you'll be subject to them. So now people might say, well, I don't like that because it might change in the future, but the law's the law, and you can't say I'm not going to comply with the law in the future because the laws aren't that today. You have to say, well,
I totally agree.
But this is the really hard thing to get our minds in, well, at least for me, because in DAO science, you're in open source territory and in composable territory. So the art of framing what protocol you're going to work on is about reducing it to its most basic function, so that that's a composable part. And that's what makes you more connected into the overall ecosystem, because your part might be linked with not just gyms, but also I don't know, retail businesses. And so it's the parameters that are really hard to determine in what your protocol should be. So it's not about, this is the boxing bag function and this is the treadmill function. It's about, this is the equipment function and there is a fee for use. And that's sort of how we've got decentralized exchanges and liquidity pools. Each person can deploy their own liquidity pool, and there can be a bit of manipulation around the features that each liquidity pool has, but that reductionist sort of thinking goes counter to this corporate mentality that, Andrew, you raised, this corporate past we've had, where we feel like we've been trained to build empires and do more and more things as part of the service offering rather than be less and less. So that's the really hard thing, and especially that's challenged me through the pay to rely protocol. And as all of you would have seen in the slide deck, that's literally why you've got separate slides that say we can have just a very reductionist basic thing, or we can have all the bells and whistles, but the way that you go about it is very composable, to extend the longevity of each composable part, and then hopefully the whole thing in the context of legal and professional products. But yeah, there's many ways of solving it, Vic, and that's exactly why we're experimenting, figuring out what fits best.
I would love to see code bases trained, or sorry, some contracts and code bases produced and published, perhaps by the DAO, perhaps by Lex DAO, that show just to the extent to which you can train what some of the outcomes are. It would be, it'd be really cool. But yeah, I think fundamentally there's like a slidey scale somewhere between having ultimate flexibility to vary your terms in a unilateral way, which will no doubt suit the likes of Animoca and Yuga Labs and a few others, without sounding bitchy this morning, all the way through to producing something that is meant to be stayed and true, does vary over time, and gives people the certainty that they need to produce composable products. So yeah, I think we're still yet to find that medium ground, and who's to say that you need to actually find it, and it needs to be this is the protocol. Projects need to find that sweet spot for themselves.
But again, it goes back to why a number of people are disillusioned with corporate governance, because you can't easily fork the governance. And in a DAO, like if 50% of people want to go direction A with the protocol, with the treasury, then they can. But the 50% that doesn't, because it's open source, they can copy paste, they can do their own token, they can raise, or maybe get a grant from the other treasury, and then you have an easy split of separate minds to continue innovation with what you're doing. Whereas in a corporate, those with the most power would squash the divergence of ideas, and we don't hear it, we don't see it, and then we miss out because of it. So sorry, I'm just at my most disillusioned with corporates at the end of the year.
That's fair.
Yeah, Greg M. I know you would love to contribute. I don't know if you're in a position to chat, but would love to hear from you if you can.
I'm just fascinated, really. I mean, what Alex was saying earlier about the financial side of this whole birth of an ecosystem, there's always going to be people trying to make money out of it, and we're actually a fund manager, Alex, and so we try to pick themes, or where's the next disruption coming from. So this kind of volatility you see, and service providers to the financial side of it failing, it just yeah, it's not good for the whole ecosystem, but it's just noise. I mean, what we see is, like discussions today, and people are still doing things. The technology hasn't been challenged as such. There's still stuff happening. People are doing things. Conferences are still happening. People are still developing NFTs. People are still coming up with, the people we have through our office who are trying to improve chain to chain action, and it's just, there's so much. And I guess this is the first time probably ever there's been this birth of this whole new ecosystem, industry, environment, call it what you will, that everybody could watch and everybody could participate in. So yeah, it's a little bit all over the place, but the whole collective effort towards it, the development of DAOs, it's just yeah. I continue to be fascinated, and as long as you don't get distracted by what's going on the dollar side, yeah, it's just it doesn't change the belief in it. Really, it's service providers to the financial side that are causing the noise.
Yeah.
Although we have seen a lot more scams lately.
Well, but
yeah, that's
scams
just part
always,
of the industry.
and they always increase just before the Christmas New Year break. So
yeah, and they also apply to when something's new, there's the opportunity for problems. I'm sure back in the gold rush, there were plenty of people who were scammed when they were going to buy their shovels, picks, and their gold licenses and all the rest of it. I don't think anything's changed at a human nature level there at all. One interesting metric, back to your disillusionment point, Joni, that was raised in the conference the other day, which was a good use of words to something that we've thought about and thought in a different way, but it was using a metric of in a DAO as a return on attention. So rather than return on investment, return on attention, which we look at as being how people deal with their bandwidth, what interests them, why do they want to present some of their time and contribution and endeavour to do something. And that's to your point earlier, Greg, where you were talking about this ability to get a shared interest and things like that. That can help in that sort of space in terms of what you build up in your attributes and your profile, if you like. So I thought it was from Michael from Block Science talked about this, and I think this return on attention piece is really quite interesting, particularly when you link it to an endeavour value concept, which is one of the things we'll introduce in the workshops in the new year, but how one is recognised and attributed for the time, the effort, the wisdom, the whatever it might be, a series of different things into doing something, and how it doesn't necessarily bring a dollar return today, but it sets up and frames a vault of value of your contributions over time to projects or whatever else that then build out into can be benefits, but also can be used on the liability side and insurance side to look at how that balances the ledger as well. So that's some stuff we'll be looking at in the new year.
Yeah,
I highly recommend checking out a recent Bankless episode with Antonio Garcia Martinez. It's fascinating if you want to take a walk back in sort of the history of the internet and sort of how ads paid for it, and where AGM Antonio sort of sees. He's building a startup at the moment, essentially around sort of what ad structure might look like in Web3. I've got about 20 minutes to go, but it's fascinating. And he spent multiple years at Facebook, sort of structuring their ad structure, if you like, as well. So it was a pretty fascinating convo.
Well, and if you haven't already checked it out, the white paper for Brave and basic attention token, which goes into all of the mathematics around measuring attention. And I don't think they use the word return on attention, but I'm an active user of Brave. I'm earning BAT. I want to be a content contributor and use my BAT. So that the big takeaway as well for me from the What's Governing Web3 conference is the in maths we trust, and we did workshops to try and understand game theory through the Nash equilibrium, and I still don't understand it, but what I appreciate is that the true mathematicians that get those theories and then apply them to game theory, that is why there is a key difference in the white papers that are based in maths and mathematic theory versus those that have not gone through that rigor. Because it was a relatively simple mathematical workshop this week to try and understand Nash equilibrium. It was in the context of Bitcoin mining. We applied it in the context of some other token incentive arrangements. And the way that it was brought back to the mathematical formula of whether there are mixed motives or whether there can be bargains struck by the parties at the beginning to game the system, if the outcome is to get the most amount of tokens or to get an equal amount of tokens together, all of this mathematical theory comes back to and explains why we're incentivized to act and whether or not we will regret the actions that we've taken based on the outcome. And it was just mind-blowing to see that maths can explain so much of our behavior. And if you understand the maths, you can design your incentive systems better to perhaps elicit the community responses and the community experiments that you really do want to undertake. And I just wish it was recorded, because the guy from Kleros ran it, and fantastic session. And I'll never be a mathematician, but I respect what they're able to do.
Was there a link you can send? I mean, I've heard of the Nash sort of equilibrium. But is there something that you said there was a white? Did you say there was a white paper?
So for Brave and for BAT, their white paper goes into a lot of mathematical equations. I don't know if they mention the Nash equilibrium, but
right.
But after going through this workshop this week, that's sort of one of the foundational theoretical understandings when you go in.
BAT.
Yeah, it stands for Basic Attention Token.
Yeah. Okay. I'm interested in having just a look and seeing what they look like. I'm a bit of a maths nerd, so
yeah. Well, it's fascinating. Vic, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think attention from a philosophical standpoint is emerging as the far more important currency than time, or you can distinguish between attention and time. Attention being the quality of the time that you put into something. And that sort of has a flow-on effect for how you actually value your services. If you're, say, a professional services provider, it has a flow-on effect for how you value your investment in projects, and again, that return on attention. But I think it also puts front and center the issue of contribution by DAO members to projects, and how to produce not only rewards mechanisms that recognize at that time, but also how do you create, or is it possible to create voting rights that are proportionate to time put into a project? And is it appropriate given what DAO governance is meant to look like? And there's a bigger conversation point, which is, okay, is DAO governance meant to represent a democratic model, or is it meant to represent I know it's a bad word, a corporate advisory model, or a corporate governance model? And should it be something in between the two? And I'm not taking credit for that thinking process. That's definitely something that has come from the minds that's Jason Potts and Sinclair Davidson. And I think Chris Berg was also had some involvement in that, and they're sort of looking at that actively, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Vic, did you want to give an update quickly to the group, because you did have some response from the legal services bodies this week on pay to rely? I know it's not good news, but it was still worth sharing.
Okay. Well, they're not interested in meeting us, and yeah, it's not. Look, they couch it in terms of it's not an area that it falls within their purview. And this was the council that manages the uniform law that is then administered by the different states that adopt uniform professional services laws for lawyers. Mm-hmm. So it was pre-staged in our informal conversations with the VS, Victorian Legal Services Board, that they were probably the most conservative of the bunch and we'll probably get nowhere. So I sort of was anticipating that, but it's lovely to see the innovation and dynamism is dead on arrival at the council level.
Well, and that's at the council level. They've basically referred us on to just work with each of the state and territory bodies.
Yeah, I think it was just a bit too hard basket for them, to be honest.
It's okay, Vic. I can tell you a story about, I wind back 15, maybe 18 months ago when Multilateral Group tried to talk to one of the major associations in governance, leadership associations, about the emergence of ESG and net zero as reporting standards. And they not only didn't have it on their radar, but weren't interested in even learning about it. Things have moved on rather quickly in that space.
Oh, I feel you. Look, if I was going to knock on the door of legislators for innovation and innovation tips and feedback, well, the problem is with me. It's not with them.
Oh gosh. Well, on that note, I think we can say that we've got a lot of work ahead of us into 2023. Keep your eye on the emails in the Discord for the email description about these workshops in February, and I'll put the dates and the times in the events channel. If I can figure it out so that we don't get Zoom bombed, I'll also try and make it very simple in the Discord events channel to register as an observer or express interest to be one of the active participants. And have a safe, restful, happy break and get ready for another year of hard and smart work into 2023. Thanks for everything this year, everyone.
See ya.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, Joni, we should talk about when do we have our next community? When do we resume? We should talk about that as well.
Oh, we'll do that in Discord. Everybody needs
so you've switched off then.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Right. All right. Catch you, everyone.
Right.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye.